Hello everyone, I am Abhishek Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Chakda College. Today I am going to talk about Gitanjali poem number 56 by Rabindranath Tagore. The title that I have chosen for this lecture is The Joy That Descends, Decoding the Divine Love in Gitanjali 56. Gitanjali 56 is one of those poems in which Tagore has dealt with man-God relationship. The merging of the finite with the infinite, of the individual self with the universal self, and the union of God and man are the core themes of both the secular and devotional poems of Tagore. What is interesting in Tagore's devotional poetry is that he depicts the man God relationship in strikingly secular terms. Tagore has something new to say about that relationship in Gitanjali 56. The poet asserts with intense lyricism that God needs men to express his infinite love. The lyric speaker addresses God and tells him that he has come down to the earth to take part in the joy of which he is so full. He asserts that without him, God's love would have meant nothing. He regards himself as God's partner in the festivity of life. The delight the lyric speaker feels is nothing but the expression of the endless play of thy delight. Such is the nature of the speaker's realization that he cannot separate himself from God, from his individual self, from the universal self, from the finite, from the infinite. So profound is his love of God that he goes to the extent of saying that he has no will of his own. It is for God to decide what he will do. He says, "In my life, thy will is ever taking shape." The speaker calls himself God's lover and says that God has decked himself in beauty to captivate him. The note here is strikingly secular, just as a woman adorns herself to captivate her lover. So God has adorned himself to hold the speaker spellbound. The speaker becomes one with God, whose love loses itself in the love of thy lover, which leads to the perfect union of the two. God is infinite, so is his love. Yet, he needs to be united with the individual self of the human lover. Therefore, the longing for love is mutual. If the devotee had not existed, the endless play of God's delight would have been impossible. There is no question that the poem bears the marks of Tagore's individual talent. But it is also true that Tagore is deeply rooted in the traditional devotional and secular poetry of Bengal. In the poetry of great Vaishnava poets like Chandidas, we find the merging of devotional and erotic elements. Tagore has brought this technique to perfection. The central theme of Tagore's poetry, how joy animates everything. He has suggested in many of his poems and essays that this joy comes from the oneness of the individual self and the universal self. Sorrow remains as long as man cannot realize this truth. Tagore believes all that exists is the manifestation of God's delight. It is for man to take part in this delight. The river of delight is flowing because God manifests himself in many forms. The union between God and man demands self surrender on the part of the devotee. Because he is one with God, the question of exercising his personal will does not arise. What he is or will be depends on God's will. God needs man for his will to take shape. The most striking thing about the poem is that the union between God and man takes place here and now. The traditional religious faith looks upon this union as a thing to be achieved in the life after death. But for Tagore, this union is taking place continuously in this mundane world. Because this union is taking place every moment, life is fascinating as death. Because there is an unceasing flow of joy in this world. One can achieve freedom in, to quote Tagore, thousands of bondage. To conclude, this poem is an excellent example of Tagore's pantheistic philosophy of life. That's all. Thank you.